Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. Tons of fallout still unfolding in front of our very eyes related to the Supreme Court saying that a lower level judge could no longer block Trump's election executive order. We're going to get into it today. We saw that as soon as the order made its way back down to Judge Indira Talwani, that the leftist fired back immediately. They unleashed a whole slew of lawsuits. We had dozens of blue states also joining in hand. And now the DOJ is striking back. They've got their reply submitted. We've also got the red states who are jumping in on this thing. And so the big civil battle as they relate to our election continues on. We're excited to break it all down and see where we stand. We've got a lot of additional briefing coming up. And then we'll have arguments on this coming up very soon. So lots to unpack there. Then we're going to go over to Michigan. We've got now new documents released from Sheriff Dar Leaf. This was the sheriff who had previously said that a whistleblower emerged and said that Jocelyn Benson was committing election fraud, essentially saying that they were adding people who were non-citizens, illegal voters to the list. And then the clerks would get the list and be able to validate them. Now we got some more evidence in the form of released documents from the sheriff confirming the same. And there is a lot more scandal afoot out there in Jocelyn Bensonville. She is also prohibiting and blocking, with the help of other leftists, a new measure that would actually go on to the ballots. And we'll take a look at that. They took a sampling of these signatures that were a part of a petition and then said, oh, you're invalid and you're not allowed to put this to the voters. So we'll talk about that. Then we've got a Canadian. Lots of Canada news today, including a newly named lake. We'll come back on that. But we also have an indictment and an affidavit from a set of criminal charges filed against a Canadian for voting illegally in our elections. Of course, the thing that never happens happened again. So we'll take a look at that charging document, see exactly what this person did, and then see what the president is doing to do a little trolling for the Canadians. And so we got a great show planned ahead. Very glad that you're with us. We hope your week is unfolding beautifully, and we hope the tubes are connected, and it looks like they are. That's tremendous news. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let us do it, shall we? Starting right here. The DOJ fires back against the leftist lawyers who are representing the League of Women Voters and the state of California. We are, of course, in Judge Indira Talwani's courtroom, now picking the case back up after the Supreme Court slapped her down. Both lawsuits were filed against the Trump administration to block the executive order fixing our elections. And the judge entertained both of these claims for months and went through the motions to block the key provisions of the order. Now the Supreme Court said she should have never done that at all because there was no standing for them to bring the complaints, and they weren't ripe since we didn't actually have a final rule from the Postal Service. Now we do have a final rule. The injunctions were lifted thanks to the Supreme Court. The rules went into effect. The complaints were amended to demand a new injunction saying now we're being harmed and now we can bring a viable claim. So we'll take a look at what the DOJ said here because they are responding with some fury, articulating the position of the government about why both of these groups, the League of Women Voters, which is a nonprofit that is really created to file election lawsuits, and the state of California, both of these joined together. They want to block any election reforms. And remember, the two main components of Trump's EO, one was a citizenship list, one was some Postal Service regulations and new rules that would match voters to the list so that we can validate where ballots are going, where they're being sent to, and how they're being picked up, and then ultimately sent back to the state, county, and registrars to count the votes. And so now we have a relatively short filing for a matter like this, but let's not forget the judge only gave them about 12 hours in an insanely aggressive schedule. The judge saying, I got to get this back on track quickly so that we can actually injunct you again so that none of this goes into effect before the election. And so it's going very fast. We've got a lot more to come, but let's not forget this is in Indira Talwani's courtroom. She is an Obama judge. She was appointed back in 2014, and she comes from Berkeley School of Law. So she's being very Berkeley in her jurisprudence. And she's also been a thorn in the side for the Trump administration since the beginning. She ordered Trump to continue to fund Planned Parenthood. She blocked Trump from revoking immigration parole. She blocked Trump from using the voter lists and more, and has been just an activist judge from the very beginning. So the DOJ is now submitting their response, and we've been following this for quite some time, and so we wanted to see what their arguments were, including whether or not the court even has jurisdiction, which they'll get into. Now, they write, back to the leftist attorneys for California and the League of Women Voters, they say, all right, Judge, listen, these lawsuits in their current form are largely premised on the theory that the Postal Service, according to the left, is trying to seize control of federal elections. Now, it is not doing that. Their narrative was seemingly formed months before the rule was even published. They were saying this was the story before they even got to see the outcome. And so it's impossible to square their fake narrative with the actual text of the actual rule, which has now been published. It differs in material respects from the doomsday assumptions that animated the League and the Californians. So the final rule that is now active imposes modest informational requirements, that's it, on senders of outbound federal ballot mailings. So the states maintain all of their electoral control. All they're doing is just complying with Postal Service requirements. We have a standardized design. We have review requirements for the envelopes. These types of things have already been long recommended by the Postal Service, and some of which are already in use in many states. You're already doing these things, Team Blue. So it requires uploading the name and address of the intended recipient of the mail-in ballot in an online portal. Where do you want the ballot to go? Just tell us, because we're going to send it to them. Also, we want to improve internal visibility and processing so that we can accelerate this, saying that this is already something that you have. You have the list, you have the names, you have the addresses. Just put them in the portal, and then we can accelerate the delivery. And critically, the final rule that was just published allows the states in the rule, not the Postal Service, to identify which voters should ultimately receive the ballots and make no changes whatsoever to the roster of the state residents, doesn't decide who is permitted, eligible, who can get the ballots or not. We're not even going to scrutinize those decisions or alter that information in any way. Instead, it's all left up to the states entirely. Their job is to accurately and lawfully identify its residents who are eligible to vote by mail. And that is the problem. They don't want to do that. They don't want to go through their list and actually kick the dead people off, or the non-citizens off, or the felons off, or the people who moved out of state off. They want it to be a free-for-all so that extra ballots go out that they can go gather and then vote multiple times. So the Postal Service is not going to determine voter eligibility. We don't decide what's in the ballot. We don't decide mailing or receipt deadlines or even ballot counting procedures at all. It doesn't displace a single state election law, period. And it need not and should not prevent a single voter from voting by mail. All we want to do is just see where they're getting picked up from, where they're going, and create an actual chain of custody. So the DOJ says, listen, these modest improvements and modernization of the Postal Service infrastructure for this sensitive category of mail are very consistent with both statutory law set by Congress and the Constitution. And as explained below, and as will be explained in even greater detail when we have to file something else by 11 p.m. on Saturday, since this whole thing is being accelerated, our Postal Service has long taken election-specific actions about envelope design. We have priority processing for mail-in ballots. We already have mail logos. And we have likewise also relied on the same authorities in those adoptions to adopt this one. And none of this is particularly sensitive. None of this actually raises operational concerns. And so there is no material distinction between what we've done before and what we're doing now, at least when it comes to the legal authority that we're invoking. So accordingly, since the California leftist and all the blue states, and there's like 25 of them now, and the League of Women Voters, they're unlikely to succeed, the DOJ saying we will win, and so their motion should be denied. Now, even if they could show that they were likely to succeed in this, the equities weigh strongly in our favor. There should not be a TRO right now. The Supreme Court Judge Indira just slapped you down this week saying that if we have an extended appellate review, now it's going to come too late for the midterms, and this is going to cause irreparable harm from the government, which is what SCOTUS just said. They're referencing that in the Trump versus California case. And although their filings emphasize their fears, they say this is going to cause last-minute confusion and chaos, they ignore the mirror image problems and the risk of significant regulatory whiplash that is likely to result if this court, you, Indira, hurries this along and grants their TRO. Okay, SCOTUS just said, you're blocked, the rules are back on, and so if you cancel it again, it's like on again, off again, on again, off again. What are we doing? Especially since the Supreme Court just ruled that you had to vacate your prior injunction. And so let's be clear on the background. Yesterday, the Postal Service published the final rule in the Federal Register. It's now active. The Postal Service issued the rule pursuant to its rulemaking and operational authority under these provisions of U.S. Code, Title 39, 4012, 4014A1. The rule amends the domestic mail manual. All it does is place modest reporting and design requirements on the envelopes that actually carry federal mail. And the rule also requires that federal ballots that are transmitted in the mail to be put in an envelope that has a mail logo and has barcodes so that they're automation compatible with unique codes that denote the status as a federal ballot mail and a delivery point zip code. Okay, and that's what we've long said, that what happens if there's more ballots going to a certain zip code than there is population, then you'll see that's a big problem there. So state and local election officials must submit their envelope designs to ensure compliance and give us certain information about the mail that they're intending to send. And specifically then, unique barcodes, this is the rule, will be applied to each ballot's envelope along with the name and address of the recipient and the state sending the ballot. All needs to be uploaded prior to presenting an outbound ballot mailing. So the states upload the list. They say, these are everybody we want to send the list to, so they can match the name to a barcode to a ballot. Election officials may continually update this, and when outbound federal ballot mail is presented for mailing, all we're going to do is match the barcode data to the portal data and ensure compliance. And all mailings that comply with these requirements will ultimately be accepted. So we're not going to confirm or perform any verification of any voter eligibility. That's for you guys. Our role is limited to simply ensuring that the envelopes comply with the rule. And otherwise, you retain full control over everything. All you got to do is just upload your list. Now, several features of this rule are not even new. For years, the Postal Service has recommended this, that federal ballots actually use unique barcodes, be automation compatible, have an official logo, and have a design review. This rule is long-standing, and this new rule turns on these recommendations. They see here, even in Kit 600, in a prior election mail guide, it was all articulated there. Now, many of even the plaintiff states have already adopted these things. Many of them have even advocated for them. These requirements are only a baseline, and so nothing prevents us from enhancing it. And most importantly, states remain entirely free to run their own elections. Nobody's usurping anything. It's a stupid narrative that they're all regurgitating because many of them have not even read the rule, including Letitia James and the rest of them. So all of this is consistent with federal law. And by the way, they don't even have to use the U.S. mail for any part of their election process if they don't want to. And so we're going to go through the analysis in the main argument, but they say on the equities, if we balance all of this out, Team Blue and all of their filings, they focus heavily on their fears. They say this is going to cause last-minute confusion. It's going to cause chaos in November. But those arguments overlook whiplash of the regulatory process, and it's going to further compress the process. So what you should do is whatever you ultimately decide about the merits here, you should at least give us more time to do it, because right now she's trying to really escalate this thing. We saw that in the briefing schedule. She set everything to happen very quickly, and then she wants an actual hearing on the motions for the preliminary injunction, which is going to be scheduled Monday of next week on September 3rd. So everything needs to be happening very, very quickly. They say if you're going to go that route, you got to at least give us a time to make our voice heard. Now, if they win, all of these steps may be wasted, at least for this election, if you block us from actually creating the process. But that outcome is far less harmful, including to them, than the reverse scenario, which is if this continues to be delayed as we get closer in time to the upcoming election. So let's say the DOJ loses, Postal Service is blocked, Then they win. Then we can actually implement all these things. And now it's like October. So now they have to race to do it. So the better process is to let us continue on with this before you block us, because it will cause less chaos that way. Now, although things are different now, the Supreme Court already ruled in our favor and hinted that we're going to win, as they explained that because of the reversal of the district court's judgment, it would come too late for the midterms. This could be a serious setback, and you're already meddling in the workings of the executive branch. This is an Article 3 court stepping into the executive prerogative, explaining that this should be separated because all Trump did is set some new rules inside of the executive branch. They're not imposing on the state at all. The Supreme Court articulating that concept. So, by the way, they're not even going to win. So given the extremely short time allotted to prepare this filing, like 12 hours, insane, the many issues here and the fact that we haven't even briefed these things give us no choice but then to offer just an abbreviated version of their arguments here. And so we reserve our right to fully respond more in the future, including its Saturday evening's preliminary injunction opposition 2 days from now. But nevertheless, the core of our submission on the merits is very straightforward, not all that complicated. This is ultimately a regulation of U.S. mail. That's it. And it's a modest one, not even doing anything crazy. This is not a federal takeover of election administration by the Postal Service. That basic reality undermines virtually all of their claims and illustrates why they are unlikely to succeed on the merits. Now, let's get into it. Now, although federal court litigation challenging significant government policies has become the norm in recent years because we're living in a new era of lawfare, in America's judicial history, we have entered into a new phase where activist judges, leftist nonprofits, leftist lawyers, the entire apparatus that they've been building for years, after taking over the law schools, taking over the various bar associations, weaponizing licensing, getting control of the judiciary, all of that is now coming to a head, and they're exercising the break glass in case of emergency button, which they've now done. So now we're here. But let us not forget the final rule here is not subject to the same form of review of most of those other cases. You can't just make all your claims in an Article 3 court, and we mentioned this in the run-up to today. That is because the Postal Service is exempt from review under the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act. There are two mechanisms that could be utilized here, but in this case, some of these claims can't be filed in this court. They have to go through the Postal Service Regulatory Commission, the PRC. So to be sure, the absence of a cause of action for judicial review under the APA does not necessarily foreclose all judicial review. So they're making a bunch of claims. Some claims may be able to come into Article 3 courts, but others really shouldn't. And that review that can come into Talwani's court is in fact quite narrow. One, it is available only to determine whether the agency has acted ultra-virus, that is, whether they exceeded their statutory authority, citing other cases. And two, that sort of non-statutory ultra-virus claims also requires identification of an agency violation where they say there is a specific prohibition in the law and that the law is clear and mandatory. Okay, so we talked about this, like, why are they even suing here? And this was the big reason they wanted to accelerate this, is because they knew this, that if the rule becomes effective, then some of their claims can't survive in this court. They have got to go through a different mechanism where people can complain about the Postal Service, because a lot of people do. Congress set up an alternative venue to say, you got to go through this administrative body first before you then can go into the courts and actually file your lawsuit there. So if you are here, it's got to reach a specific threshold. It's got to be a specific prohibition. The law says you cannot do this, and we're doing it. Then you can sue. Otherwise, you're in the wrong court. So in other words, as the Supreme Court put it last year, a claim like this is essentially a Hail Mary pass. And in court, as in football, that attempt rarely succeeds unless you have hack Obama judges or Biden judges who want to stall out the executive branch. So they can't satisfy that high standard because there isn't anything that we have specifically violated. There is no mandatory duty in congressional law, in statute, that we are not abiding by. And by the way, they don't even try to identify any one of those problems that the rule actually violates. Instead, they basically dress up a typical statutory authority argument as an ultra-virus claim and then try to shove it into this court. But even if one were to disagree with the Postal Service's conclusion about the reach of its authority that is articulated in the final rule, that sort of statutory argument is not valid here. But whatever the appropriate standard of review is, whether we should be in this court, whether we should be in administrative proceedings, we are authorized by Congress. We're not actually violating anything specific or failing to do something that's mandatory. We have power to do this. Congress authorized the Postal Service to, quote, adopt, amend, or repeal such rules and regulations not inconsistent with this title as necessary in the execution of its functions here. And Congress also gave the Postal Service, quote, all other powers incidental, necessary, and appropriate to carrying out these powers. And those specific powers include the power to provide for collection, handling, transportation, delivery, forwarding, returning, and holding of mail, and for the disposition of undeliverable mail. So we're following those grants of authority. And so our general rulemaking powers plainly include at least some authority to impose reasonable requirements for envelope design and labeling requirements, and we can require mailers to provide basic information about sensitive items as we have before. And so indeed, as we put in our rule that is now effective, we have invoked these very authorities in the past. There's precedent for this, including where, as here, the type of mail in question is sensitive, but it's not dangerous. Here's a couple of examples. One is if we have cremated human and animal remains, you can't just shove that into a box and slap a label on it and a bunch of stamps on there and ship it somewhere. It must be transported through specific boxes, and it must be trackable via barcode. And ballots are easily as important as cremated human and animal remains. And so they cite some of these cases here saying these rules have been allowed. And similarly, if you have replica explosives, same thing here. Although those aren't dangerous, they also require special handling to prevent operational disruptions rather than being prohibited from the mail altogether. They have to be mailed in certain ways, including with an in-person presentation to a retail counter and shipment via registered mail. So this rule is very similar to those. It is the same type of legal mechanism, although ballot mail doesn't present precisely the same operational issues as cremated remains or replica explosives. It is sensitive and it raises unique operational considerations. So in the face of these broad grants of authority that we can do these things, we have under U.S. Code Title 39, we can govern the collection and handling and more. They then try to shift their focus away from this to hide the ball from you. They instead focus on the context of elections. And so their arguments that the Postal Service ultimately lacks this authority, here they're largely premised on the repeated, boring assertions that the Postal Service doesn't have the power to regulate elections. They know they have the power to regulate mail. They're just saying we're using the mail for our elections. But that argument fails. They're not even understanding the rule. It doesn't regulate elections at all. Here's why. Now, under the rule, the states can continue to count mail ballots and mail them to whomever they wish, whenever they want. The rule doesn't regulate the form or the content of the ballots, the timeline for the transmission of the ballots, voter eligibility, mail voting eligibility, or anything similar. It regulates only how states must design and label their envelopes if they want to send it in mail, if they want to. If they elect to use the U.S. mail to send their ballots, they got to comply. But if not, they can do something else, like vote in person. Now, as the rule itself makes clear, we don't purport to alter the eligibility of any individual voter at all. And both before and after this rule, they cite that the service does not have any legal responsibility for the state voter rolls or administration of elections inside the states. In other words, this is a regulation of mail, and there's lawful authority to do that, not the elections. So they cannot seriously contend that the Postal Service is disabled from adopting any election mail specific rules. Can we do anything if there's some incidental consequence for you? In other words, the states have veto power over the federal government and the Postal Service if they don't like something. Now, their co-counsel and others have actually long advocated for similar implementations like this. They want the mail-in ballot to be prioritized. They even wrote about that in another lawsuit called the NAACP versus the U.S. Postal Service. And so if we have no legal authority to make any rules about election mail, as it seems to be their theory, then it's hard to understand how those other long-standing efforts would be lawful. Why were they asking us to do something illegal if they wanted us to actually prioritize and accelerate mail-in balloting so that their fraudulent elections can be conducted more quickly? Nor is the Postal Service legally obligated to turn a blind eye to the use of mail to facilitate fraud. Now, consider, for an example, a scenario in which a retirement community is repeatedly, or at scale, they are repeatedly targeted for elder abuse mail scams. There is no evident reason anywhere why the Postal Service could not impose special design and registration rules for envelopes used to send solicitations to these senior centers. The rule here is the same form. By acknowledging the indisputable reality that election-related mail is particularly sensitive and that crimes related to election mail are particularly important, we're imposing some guidance. And so whether or not voter fraud is common or uncommon, the Postal Service has the legal authority to take these measures, and we have power to do it according to federal law. Now, under the Elections Clause, this is not violating the Constitution. They cite it for those thick in the head in Team Blue. So they say the time, place, and manner of elections shall be prescribed by states, but Congress may at any time, the second half of that Elections Clause, may at any time by law make or alter those regulations except as to the places of choosing senators, also in the Constitution. And when they cite this, they often will delete this entire second half of this clause. They'll say, oh no, states govern everything, forgetting that Congress can update those so that the nation has some uniformity. We are a union. We're not 50 independent states, each with one veto power over federal elections. And so their filings argue repeatedly that the president doesn't have any authority constitutionally to directly regulate elections on his own. But as explained above, first of all, the rule doesn't regulate elections anyways. States retain full control of everything. But in any event, the final rule was not even issued by the president. It came from the Postal Service. And as a matter of their own judgment about how it exercises its statutory authority given to them by Congress, and it's also undisputed that Congress does have the authority to regulate in this area. Whether the rule is conceived as a regulation to mail, or if Congress, even if they're in their incorrect argument, wants to regulate elections, they can. So the state doesn't have unilateral plenary power. Now, after all, the parties agree that Congress can regulate elections, and Congress is delegating this power to the president. But we're not regulating the elections, but even if you thought we were, we still could. So here, their Elections Clause claim adds nothing. If the service rule is unauthorized by Congress, then it is unlawful. And if the Postal Service's rule is authorized by Congress, then there is no Elections Clause problem. So after all, they don't even argue that Congress has unlawfully delegated its authority to the executive branch, nor could they, because it's legal. But in any event, their constitutional argument and their objection proves to be far too much. Again, it is undisputed that the Postal Service, for example, already uses election mail logos and takes certain measures every election cycle to prioritize the timely delivery of election mail. Indeed, these leftists, co-counsel and their co-plaintiffs, have filed lawsuits saying that we haven't gone far enough in prioritizing election mail. So if any election regulation of U.S. mail violates the Constitution, then all of their arguments in companion cases would have also been unconstitutional. And that is a highly unlikely result. Of course, that illustrates how bad their theory is. Now, anything else that they're making arguments about lacks merit. That leaves a variety of other miscellaneous claims from the Californians and the Blues who joined them in Massachusetts, which are also unlikely to succeed. They say that these plaintiffs argue that the Postal Service has now created a new category of non-mailable matter. So certain things we can't mail, like guns and other things, usurping the role of Congress in violation of the APA. Now, to be sure, Congress has identified certain categories of things that are non-mailable, right? Congress said this cannot be sent via the U.S. Postal Service. One, fraud, anything that's fraudulent representation. No, you can't do it. Firearms, no. Poisons, no. Poisonous animals, can't send those. No explosives, no diseases, no ballistic knives, no alcoholic beverages, some tobacco products, and many live animals you can't throw into a box and send across the country. This, though, is not a mailability rule. The rule is not creating a new category of non-mailable matter into which the ballot class may fall. Actually, to the contrary, the Postal Service hopes to mail as many lawful ballots as possible, whatever the states want to send, no more and no less. And the rule does not prohibit any ballots from being mailed. All outbound federal ballot mail that meets these modest requirements will obviously be accepted and then processed and delivered just as before. And the rule does, of course, place certain conditions on the acceptance of these mailings, but that alone is not a situation that creates a new category of non-mailable matter like firearms or animals. After all, the Postal Service could easily refuse to mail a heavy package if they didn't pay sufficient postage. So that doesn't make that heavy package without proper payment non-mailable. There are conditions. You have to meet certain thresholds to use the system. And similarly, if the Postal Service refused to deliver election mail from states to voters that was sent without any postage, that would not render the unstamped election mail non-mailable. You didn't pay the postage. You can't mail it, or otherwise violate the rules governing the creation of these buckets of non-mailable subjects. Same logic applies here. So they then argue in the next one that we're now offering a non-postal service. And there's another section of the law which prohibits the Postal Service from offering any service that is not a postal service. But the requirements of this rule are not services at all. Now, as the Postal Regulatory Commission has explained, services refers to ongoing commercial activities offered to the public for purpose of financial gain. This isn't that at all. Now, even if the final rule offers services, they are not non-postal services. They're part of posting and mailing post. Rules for sending certain types of mail through the mail are about as postal as it gets. And the term postal service literally references and refers to the delivery of letters, printed matter, mailable packages, the entire process from accepting, collecting, sorting, transporting, and other ancillary functions thereof. So they argue next in C that the final rule here is an undue or unreasonable discrimination among users of the mails, because it subjects ballot mail to more rigorous envelope design. There's more severe reporting, and we have to verify these things. So it's like discrimination in the mail. It's bigotry. Their argument for everything is happening again here. So this argument fails both at the threshold and on the merits. First, as we see in another case that came out in New York versus Trump in the DC Circuit, the circuit held that the Postal Regulatory Commission, has exclusive jurisdiction over claims that are covered by this section of the law. If you're going to make a claim that they acted in violation of this section of the law, then you have to go to the Postal Regulatory Commission. You can't just bring that claim here. Congress said those types of matters need to go through the administrative process. Then you lose and you can go appeal directly to the Court of Appeals. So their only response to that seems to be that sometimes the Postal Regulatory Commission might take 90 days to make a certain decision. But that's no basis for ignoring the very straightforward limitation on this court's subject matter jurisdiction. So one of their claims really is not even supposed to be here. They should go through the PRC before they can come into this court. Now, second, another section of the code only prohibits discrimination in providing services and in establishing classifications and rates and other fees. And the challenge requirements here are none of those things. It's not a classification. It's not a rate. It's not a fee. Can't charge one state more than another state for postage. And the rule also applies here to everybody equally. There is no discrimination happening at all. Just like the rules about mailing replica explosives or cremated remains, that applies to everybody everywhere, not only for people in California. And so for obvious reasons, Congress never said that all types of mail must always be treated identically. In fact, to the contrary, Congress provided expressly, it is the responsibility, shall be the responsibility of the Postal Service to provide types of mail service to meet the needs of different categories of mail. And that is all that we've done here. One category is election ballots. So they then, in another argument, say that the Postal Service was obligated to, before they did this, issue the rule, go first over to the PRC before issuing the rule. But as with their other claim, their racist ballot, bigotry, discrimination of ballots claim, that sort of claim cannot be heard here. Although they may bring that sort of challenge, they can only do that by going through the administrative review scheme first, set forth by Congress, and then if they lose and they don't like it, then they can go and appeal directly to the Court of Appeals in the first instance and bypass the Article 3 courts. So some of this they're saying can't even be here. And so they then in subsection E say that the final rule also violates the Voting Rights Act, which they don't give a crap about. In particular, the provision that says no person acting under color of law shall fail or refuse to permit a person to vote. Now, for starters, they say, that provision of the Voting Rights Act is not judicially enforceable as a private right of action. And that cause doesn't exist. And so courts may not create it as a viable mechanism to file a lawsuit. But regardless, the final rule, even if there could be a claim, is entirely consistent with that. The rule explains repeatedly that the names provided by each state will be listed by and at the discretion of the elected officials. We're not going to second guess their submissions at all. It's in the rule right there. So in other words, state officials will retain full control over who is permitted to vote and who can use the mail. So we will never be refusing to permit anyone to vote at all. According to our own rule, they are in charge. So the question of who can and cannot vote will be, both before and after the rule, up to the state election officials to decide. And if they don't want to send the list in, that's their problem. They don't have to, but we're not picking up their ballots. Now, finally, their last argument. The California plaintiffs say privacy. And privacy here is really being articulated in favor of the fraudsters. Privacy for people who would be getting 2 or 3 ballots. Privacy for non-citizens who shouldn't be voting at all. Privacy for the people who moved out of state and should no longer be getting ballots in the original state. Felons and more. But injunctive relief here is generally unavailable under the Privacy Act, except in limited circumstances that they're not even arguing are applicable here. Citing other cases, saying only monetary damages are available for privacy violations, not an injunction stopping something from going into effect. And organizations, rather than individuals, are not entitled to any relief under the Privacy Act at all. So they can't sue. And so to be sure, in recent years, litigants have often tried and sometimes succeeded in evading these limitations. They bring in an APA claim predicated on the Privacy Act. They've done that before in Heritage Found versus DOJ and elsewhere. But the government's longstanding position is that this maneuver is inconsistent with Congress's rules and the Privacy Act itself, saying you're not allowed to bring these claims. But regardless, that workaround is plainly inapplicable here because we, as the Postal Service, are not subject to APA litigation in the first place, right? That APA claim needs to go through the PRC. So if you want to try to sneak a Privacy Act claim in with the APA claim, go do that in the PRC. Don't bring that here. And so their Privacy Act claim also fails on threshold grounds. Nor does the final rule reflect the creation of a surveillance program. We're not surveilling anything to track voting. That would violate the Privacy Act, or they say that would violate it. The rule has nothing to do with collecting records of voters' First Amendment activity at all. All we're saying, we want some barcodes on the envelopes. It's going to have a logo. Share your list so that we know who to send these to. And so here, the Privacy Act claims would also fail on the merits. And so plaintiffs' motion, they say, should fail and their temporary restraining order should be denied. Signed here by Stephen M. Pezzi, mechanically and methodically walking through all of their arguments and obliterating them one at a time. Sent in today, fresh out of the oven, into Judge Indira Talwani. Now, she, of course, has set further briefing a few days from now. We're going to have more oppositions to the preliminary injunction argument, more opposition in both of these cases. So we've got the TRO arguments that were made, and then they're already advancing to the preliminary injunction, which typically comes last. One is a temporary restraining order. The other is more preliminary, more firmly ensconced. Then we've got reply briefs coming from the leftist hacks, all happening very soon over the course of the next few days. Then we've got apparently more action on Saturday. But the point is that what Indira wants to do is accelerate this to issue a new TRO, issue a new preliminary injunction to stall this out again. And then, of course, we'll have to race back up through the Court of Appeals and to the Supreme Court. If and when she does that, we expect that she will. But Harmeet Dhillon says, this is pretty simple. When states lack safeguards to ensure only eligible citizens cast ballots, Americans lose faith in the integrity of our elections. In Ohio, in one case, the Civil Rights Division and the DOJ is now stepping in to ensure that only eligible law-abiding citizens have the opportunity to vote and not all of the Haitians in Springfield. Here's Harmeet explaining.
You're absolutely correct. So there was a pair of injunctions in federal court regarding this executive order, and meanwhile, the Postal Service went ahead and drafted some regulations that would go into effect if and only if these two injunctions were lifted, which of course only happened in the last few minutes. And so now what the Supreme Court ruled in the last couple of days was that the litigation was premature. There was one by a group of states, including California, and there was another by the League of Women Voters. That was the one that was lifted this afternoon. And so the ruling by the court was that the litigation was premature, and now that regulations have gone into effect, there will be a fresh set of litigation, as you just mentioned, and the court will then look at the merits. But the court did, in lifting the injunction, make a note that the United States has equities here as well. We have elections to administer.
Right.
And I think this regulation is eminently reasonable. After all, non-citizens are not allowed to vote. They have no right to vote. And so I think it's really a heavy lift for the challengers to this rule to claim that somehow anyone who has a right to vote is being impaired by this very common sense legislation and ruling that actually only protects the fundamental right of only American citizens to vote. This executive order, I should say.
So good stuff from Harmeet Dhillon. She's right. I think that they will have a little bit of an extra lift at the further litigation. So I think Indira will likely come back and block this some way, somehow, in order to do her duty as a person who is in service of the left. But the fact is that the Supreme Court already said that a lot of these things are happening internally inside of the executive branch. And the Postal Service had a lot of this delegated back over to them, so that the argument that they're usurping some power that they don't have, or they're stepping on somebody's toes, is actually hopefully going to fail very soon. And so we'll keep our eye on this. There's going to be a lot more litigation. Obviously, we've got a lot more briefings to get to, and we're excited to see where it goes next. Thanks for joining us and subscribing as we do. All right, and so we're not done yet. We've got the red states that are firing back. We've got their arguments as well. But first, we've got a sponsor on the show today, and so thank you for checking them out. We'll be back here in just 60 seconds, and we'll get into the red states. Quick pause here, my friends, and then we'll get right back to it. But as you know, we're only a couple of months out, and the midterms are fast approaching. And make no mistake, if the House flips, it's a big deal for our economy. That uncertainty is one of the reasons to diversify with gold from BIRCH Gold Group. In the 3 months leading up to the 2024 presidential election, the spot price of gold jumped over 12%. And why? It's a hedge against uncertainty. So if you don't own gold, I would suggest talking with BIRCH Gold. They'll discuss your goals and explain how precious metals can fit into your savings, and they can even help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold for no additional money out of pocket. Very easy to do it. Text the word WATCHER, WATCHER, to the number 989898. Get a free info kit and get some solid information, because the midterms will be here before you know it. So text WATCHER to 989898, and let's get back to it. All right, so thank you for checking out the description below. You'll find the number down there. And now we're right back to it. Starting here, the red states strike back against the blue states in the continuous battle over election integrity. You see that we've got Missouri, Alabama, we have Florida, Kansas, Indiana, and many others who are now coming out against the League of Women Voters. We know that the Supreme Court just said the League of Women Voters really have no standing or authority to even bring their claim, and Judge Indira Talwani allowed them to do that to block Trump's EO. But now the red states are saying, we want these things to be implemented. We want election integrity, and please give it to us. They say, in a moving for the temporary restraining order, The League of Women Voters and the leftists, they take hyperbole to the extreme, and they misrepresent these new rules from the mail, saying the August 26 ballot for federal elections rules is not a federal takeover of elections at all. These are states making the argument. We want it implemented. States retain complete control on over who is eligible to vote by mail. And under the rule, the Postal Service is not authorized to second guess the state's submissions. So we're not going to be implicated at all. Instead, all the Postal Service is merely doing for election mail is what it's long done for other types of mail, which are modest conditions that increase the security of mail-in voting, allowing tracking through matching barcodes and preventing other existing violations of federal law. And so, in other words, this is not about whether the Postal Service can decide who votes by mail. It's only about whether they can impose these regulations. They already have certain requirements for election mail, like using an official mail logo and label. And so the implication of the leftist arguments is that imposing even those modest rules is invalid, and that federal election mail must be made available on whatever conditions that states or private litigants demand, essentially giving them veto power. So Title 39 says you can't do that. You reject that argument based on U.S. code, saying that there is instead broad authority to adopt rules and regulations about the mail. And so Judge Indira, we're the red states. We say you should reject their motion because they're not going to win on the merits. And this is so for two independent reasons. First of all, they still lack standing to challenge this executive order. This doesn't suspend your jurisdictional requirements. They say that they have standing to sue because if you don't block this, they're not going to be able to carry out their core business activities, and their members and their communities rely on them. Once again, this is the League of Women Voters case. So this is a nonprofit entity saying our entire job is to educate voters about things, but if you make a change and we need to educate them again, then it's going to be hard for us to do it, and we're not going to be able to do our job, which is really the entire reason they exist. They say that they will need to develop new materials and revise scripts and retrain volunteers and educate voters about how to ensure that they can successfully vote. Now, as was the case in the original complaint when they sued at the outset before they got slapped down, resource diversion, the idea that you're going to have to spend additional money in order to do your job, that is not a cognizable injury, says Team Red. In rejecting a virtual identical theory of standing in a parallel case, another judge called Judge Nichols recognized the Supreme Court rejected this, saying resource diversion in another matter is not sufficient, and that people suing, quote, cannot spend their way into standing just because they spend money. The rule doesn't prohibit the plaintiffs now. They can go and educate their members. Things that they would have to do anyways. They were educating them about the old system. Now they're going to have to educate them about the new system. Nothing changed. Meaning that the need that they are creating for themselves wasn't caused by the rule. It's not even traceable to the rule. Now, other state defendants like us, the red states, we recognize that the court previously read another case differently, but the Supreme Court just rejected resource diversion as an argument for standing. Their argument was that spending money because of the executive order isn't enough, reaffirming that you can't concretize your injury just by expending funds. And so the red states, as defendants, we encourage the court to reconsider the validity of this resource diversion thesis. Now, alternatively, they once again say, well, there's going to be disenfranchisement. Some people, some states will not be able to actually comply with the new rule. But that, again, is way too speculative to confer standing. Neither the league or their members are the object of the mail rule. Rather, the rule requires that states who want to use the mail can by providing basic information and utilizing barcodes. It doesn't otherwise alter anything. So in other words, to vote by mail, the members don't need to do anything different. These are the League of Women Voters. These are not the states. These are not the secretaries. There is no new obligation for them. And there's no reason to speculate that other states will not comply with the rule. I mean, they want their mail-in ballots to go out, so they'll comply. And after all, you can't judge under Article 3, hear a matter based on hypothetical inferences and speculative harm. Now, even if they did have standing, they're still not going to win because the U.S. Postal Service has law and authority to do this. They say that they can't, but this is wrong. While they repeatedly misrepresent the rule as regulating elections, it doesn't do that. All it does is impose modest conditions on the sending of mail. U.S. Postal Service is broadly authorized to be able to do that. And indeed, they also have a general power to adopt or amend or repeal these things, as we saw in the government's brief, meaning they broadly have all powers to conduct these types of updates. Also, the law says that the Postal Service, rather than the federal courts, actually has the expertise to determine how mail should be collected and delivered. And the Supreme Court has directly addressed this before previously. There was a case called Council of Greenberg Civic Association that they reference, arguing that the Supreme Court said broad empowerment, and it was delegated over to the executive branch. The D.C. Circuit has also said the same thing in another case. They held that the Postal Service is authorized to promulgate new regulations and rules, and it extends into what they're doing here. And more specifically, their powers also include the ability to provide for collection and transportation. And other arguments about non-mailable matter, about things that may be seized or detained for violation of the law, it's very inclusive. So this is delegated regulatory authority, and what that means is that they are allowed to make changes to include reasonable measures to prevent fraudulent voting through the mail. So the breadth of this and all of this is enough to resolve all of these claims. And for this reason, there was also a long history of the Postal Service imposing conditions on various types of mail. We already talked about these in the government's brief, but human and animal remains, replicas, and more. Same thing that's happening here. This is not the case where the Postal Service has invoked general rulemaking powers to circumvent the law, or another set of circumstances where they're prohibited from doing something. And so instead, they're actually doing exactly what they should. Now, the leftists still contend that this mail must be treated differently because of the Constitution. But this is a red herring. The Elections Clause specifically empowers Congress to set rules for the election. In the second half of the clause, Congress and the Constitution also say that Congress can set the rules for the Postal Service. And so they did that. It's done. Congress already delegated broad authority to the Postal Service to place conditions on the sending of mail. And so all you got to do is just read the plain text of the law. It's broad authority. It extends to election mail just like any other type of mail. All this consistent with Congress. This again is Team Red and the red states. So this court should then reject their invitation to narrow this. They're saying that this may be a major questions doctrine, and the invocation of this is only plausible because they just keep using hyperbole to misrepresent what the rule is. But the Postal Service is not doing anything that implicates a coordinate branch of government. All it is getting a list of individuals who are actually eligible to vote by mail so that barcodes can be assigned and that states can keep track of who is voting, that are eligible to vote, who's getting ballots, and who's returning ballots. Requiring states to provide an already existing list of people and using unique barcodes is not unheralded power. It's not a transformative expansion of some authority. All it is a new instantiation of authority that was already long exercised. And so other markers deemed relevant, saying this is a major question and so Congress should decide, means that it's something, if it's big, it's a big major thing. The economic impact should be around about $50 billion. That's not happening here. They already have the list. There's only a portal. Just upload the list. You're good. There are other implications, but none of them are outlandish. Other arguments about the EPA passing regulations that then shuts down power plants and other things is not what's happening here. And while mail voting as a general matter is controversial, the Postal Service is not claiming that it could simply bar states from sending election mail. It's just a regulation. It's akin to the EPA trying to limit carbon emissions, which they love, by mandating the use of new technology and smokestacks, something the Supreme Court has already said is not a major question, even though it's related to a nationwide debate. So there are other big problems out there that the Supreme Court said can be addressed in a similar manner. So in sum, because the plaintiffs are are likely to succeed on the merits, the court should reject their motion for a temporary restraining order. And so I think they kind of missed a key word there, are not likely to succeed on the merits. We would just go back in there and do a second pass at editing. They're not likely to succeed on the merits. The court should reject their motion for a TRO. A little bit of I think an oops there, unless I'm reading that wrong, but otherwise, they should lose. Signed here by a bunch of AGs, Catherine Hanaway, Alabama. We got Florida, Indiana. We got Louisiana, Kansas, Montana, Nebraska, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Texas, Ken Paxton's office, Grant Flynn from South Dakota, and this should be a lot more full with other red state AGs. But they are responding to this. They say we want these things to happen, and hopefully it ultimately does, because they are fighting against AGs like this on Team Blue. Right now, we've got Arizona Democrat Chris Mays saying, I am going to put my body on the line. Before this goes into effect, you'll have to do it over my dead body. Here's Chris Mays explaining.
Election in time to affect this election, and if it does, do you have any sense of how many Arizonans might not get early ballots delivered?
Well, what I would say is over my dead body is that going to go into effect. We are going to fight this tooth and nail in the courts, and I've got the best Solicitor General in the country standing right there, who is going to make sure, along with the other attorneys general who are fighting this case. I think 25 states signed on to this lawsuit this morning.
That's what we're dealing with over my dead body. And every time we see that there's anything that might impinge their election scams, this is what we're actually dealing with. It is catastrophic for them. They have a very animated response when you talk about the trans or climate change or DOJ or immigration or USAID funding. But you don't often hear them say, like, I will die for this. Because if they don't win this one, their political life may actually be dead. It is all or nothing. All their eggs are in this basket. So here's more Harmeet Dhillon. Actually, here's the president, rather, explaining his great satisfaction with the Supreme Court ruling from the Oval Office today.
The Supreme Court earlier this week ruled on mail-in ballots, and there are states like North Carolina that have ballots that go out next week. How are states supposed to implement this?
Oh, they're able to. North Carolina's great. It's a great place. I want to go 3 times. They do some mail-in ballots, but basically they ruled on the legitimacy and the way we want to make them legitimate. And it was a great ruling for the Republicans.
Why did the Supreme Court earlier?
It was a great ruling for the Republicans, and the leftists were spring-loaded like out of a jack-in-the-box to file their response lawsuits. Now the judge has their arguments from the state and from the DOJ, from the Postal Service. So we'll see what she does. Indira Talwani will now receive this. There will be further briefing here. We'll see if the states are persuasive. But it seemingly is an interesting problem where judges are favoring the blue states and blue organizations as opposed to red states and red organizations, and the sitting president of the United States acting under lawful authority to make these changes. It is a big battle. Judges are picking sides, not because they're neutral and nonpartisan, but in fact, quite the opposite. They want one group to win, and they're engineering outcomes in their favor. So we'll see what happens next. We may be back to SCOTUS before we know it. But right now, the red state's saying, we want this. Please help us implement these things. And it's curious how it's become so political. Why would red states want it and blue states not want it? Curious thing happening here. So we'll keep our eye on this one. Thank you for joining and subscribing as we do. We've got another big election update on the day. And here we go on this one. Michigan Secretary Jocelyn Benson now busted. We saw that Sheriff Dar Leaf had already come out and explained that a whistleblower had come to him saying that Jocelyn was encouraging, facilitating through her election mechanics to put non-citizens, illegal aliens on the voter rolls. The argument was from Jocelyn that we'll just add everybody to the list. Soon as you get an ID or a driver's license, or you move in and register in some shape with the state, we'll just add you to the list. And then once the election nears, we'll send the list to the local town clerks. And then the town clerks will be the ones who validate and kick ineligible people back off. Turns out that's not happening. Number of town clerks, as we've talked about before, came out and said explicitly that they don't have any capability to remove people who were illegally added to the list. They don't even have in their spreadsheets any identifying indicia that would show them that this is a non-citizen, because the validation should happen at the top level. All of it then gets stripped out. They just get a list of names, and that's it. So they can't check. So the whistleblowers have now emerged. We've had a number of heroic town clerks make videos about this, begging the DOJ and the federal government for help on this. But now the sheriff is releasing some additional documents, and not a lot of commentary on this. He is, in fact, a sheriff, and he is a man of few words in many ways. Here's what he posted on the internet. Couple of documents right here, and let's zoom in on them, shall we? So the first one looks like it's a set of text messages. One sent at 1:49 p.m. Bunch of redactions on here, but you'll see this looks like it's from the MDOS, the Michigan Department of State, which would be what governs elections. So here, one message goes to this person, says, I would like to keep that proof that our department is registering non-citizens to register to vote, though, when you are done with it. Okay, I'd like to keep that. Person responds, says, okay, I honestly think it is a CARS programming error. Another error, just like in New Jersey with Governor Mikey Sherrill. A programming error that anytime anyone that changes their address, that document prints off, and when it hits the county clerk's office, nothing happens. As in, she is not actually going to be registered to vote because they will see she is not a citizen. If that makes sense to you, but I ... Then this person says, okay, with the new way of registering everyone and requiring them to send back a paper to not be registered, okay, it's registration by default, we're going to have so many people on the voter file that shouldn't be. I'm not a fan of this new way, as you can probably see. It just creates errors that can be possibly not caught. Not a very good way of doing things, and unfortunate considering this day and age. So this person is saying not actually going to be registered because the clerk will see it and know she's not a citizen. But as we know, other town clerks, two of them, have now made videos about this, and there are many more who are saying we can't see it. Okay, we can't actually validate that. So once they're on the list, we have no mechanism of getting them off the list at all. So it's a big problem. And then Sheriff Darleaf also included this document, which looks like it's part of a government form that is sent back out to people after they get your Michigan state ID card, saying if you have questions or if you do not receive your state ID card within 45 days of your application, please visit michigan.gov Secretary of State. So state ID card within 45 days. And in the same document, congratulations, you are going to be registered to vote. And your clerk will make sure you're eligible. Two of them have made videos under their names standing in front of their actual townships, one lady in Climax, Michigan, saying we can't see it. So once it comes from the Secretary of State's office, there is no way to validate it at all. So they write in this letter, and I presume this is real, it's coming from a sheriff, saying, prepare to vote, exclamation. Your clerk will make sure you're eligible. Get your answers to your questions by visiting michigan.gov/vote, and your voter jurisdiction is here, redacted. And so it's automatic, it's by default. The check and balance that is installed in the process is not actually real. So your clerk will check, otherwise prepare to vote, even if you're not eligible, because it's all by default. The whole system is rigged. So what Michigan did is they wanted to actually pass new law, and there was a major petition that went up and just got, some say, rigged against it and slapped down by the very people in charge in Michigan. So this comes from the GOP House Republicans in Michigan. They posted this one saying, the majority floor leader, Brian Posthumus, will serve as vice chair on a new committee, and they're going to be investigating what happened to this petition to get on the ballot so that the Michiganders can actually vote. There was a bill called Americans for Citizen Voting. They gathered 709,000 signatures, but then it was blocked. They were going to impose some new requirements, and then, of course, it got slapped down. What happened? So the Michigan House of Representatives created the select committee on this to identify what happened. When the petitions and the signatures came in front of the Board of State Canvassers, they said, sorry, you don't qualify. The proposed constitutional amendment would require people voting in Michigan to actually prove they're citizens before casting their ballot, would fix a lot of these problems. And he says, when more than 700,000 Michiganders sign a petition, you don't just shrug your shoulders and say, oh, sorry, didn't qualify. Now it's not going to be on the ballot, and people want to know why. And our job is pretty simple. Why? The Board of Canvassers spent nearly 7 hours on Monday this week reviewing the petition, and then they deadlocked on whether the campaign met the required threshold of 446,000 signatures. So to qualify, you need 446,000. They actually got 700,000. And what happened? Did they count them all? Did they check all 446,000 of them? No, they didn't. They just took a sample of them. So they took out 1,000 petition signatures out of 700,000, and they then analyzed those. And according to the Bureau of Elections in Michigan, Americans for Citizen Voting fell just short of the valid signatures needed within that sample to qualify for certification. So they pull 1,000 out, they check those, they say, oh, your actual validity rate is low in this 1,000, whatever the percentage needs to be. Then they just apply that same outcome to the total number of ballots. Oh, so only 500 of your 1,000 are actually legitimate. And so we're going to presume it's a 50% success rate in total. And so out of your 700,000, if only 50% of those are valid, that's going to drop you under the line. And so the measure cannot go on the ballot to the voters. He says this is a lot bigger than a spreadsheet or a sample of signatures. More than 700,000 Michiganders signed their names. They deserve a straight answer about what happened. Maybe everything was done right. I want to see the process. I want to see the numbers, and let the facts speak for themselves. And so the committee's work now comes amid continued scrutiny of non-citizen voting in Michigan. Earlier this year, the Secretary of State's office confirmed that at least 15 non-citizens illegally cast ballots in 24. Dana Nessel also came out and said that, yep, we're charging 5 non-citizens because they voted in 2024 as well. But they don't want to do anything structurally to fix this problem. And according to the whistleblower documents, you're automatically registered. Congratulations, prepare to vote. So he said the committee's work should not be about whether lawmakers personally approve or support this measure. It should be focused on whether they got an actual fair review. He says you don't have to like the proposal to agree that 700,000 plus signatures deserves a serious look. This isn't complicated. We're going to ask questions, look at how the decisions were made, and figure out whether the process got it right. And so they're going to begin their work in the coming weeks. And there are other actual local representatives who are in on this. This guy is out there. He said, when more than 700,000 Michiganders put their names on this petition, we have a responsibility to ensure that this is all fair, transparent, and accountable. Saying that this guy will also serve on this new committee. On the board, the actual canvassers on the Board of State Canvassers deadlocked. We don't know if there's enough here. Saying that ultimately it was only about the 1,000 signatures. And so they just took the outcome and applied it to the total number. So we need to know how this all went down. And we're going to continue to work on this as well. So Michigan is now in on it. Now, Mike Lee, the senator, said we really need a federal solution to this. He's been perhaps the senator the most on the Save America Act. Said very easy to go get this thing done. Cancel the freaking recess and call us back into session so we can vote on it. Announce that A, we will remain in session continuously, debating the bill until it passes, and B, any senator wishing to filibuster will be required to speak and get up there and put their money where their mouth is. And we think, of course, that he is very right. So here's more Harmeet Dhillon. She says, under the leadership of Todd Blanche and the Civil Rights Division, we want to make sure mail-in ballots and our elections actually have integrity. Trump's order about these ballots is common sense, and protecting Americans' right to vote is fundamental. Here's Harmeet explaining the truth.
A couple of states, both Arizona, in a case that's pending before the United States Supreme Court, and now Ohio, which tried to improve their own election integrity measures by requiring what we call in the election world DPOC, documented proof of citizenship, when you register to vote. Makes sense, right? Most Americans think that's required, but actually it isn't. You just check a box, and then that's how these thousands of people get on the voter rolls in different jurisdictions. We'd like to help states take them off, but guess what? 30 states, including some red states and mainly blue states, are blocking our efforts to do that. And so, to what end? I mean, do people want non-citizens voting in our federal elections?
Yes,
that's the natural result
Yes.
of not allowing checks and balances here. So Ohio, in that case, the Civil Rights Division went in and did a statement of interest in that case. That federal judge rejected it. Now the Ohio Secretary of State is going to appeal that, and we're going to take a look at supporting them on that, because the National Voter Registration Act isn't just a blank check for anybody to get registered to vote, whether they're here legally or illegally. And if we don't have safeguards on who's entitled to vote, we don't have a clean election that people can trust.
That's exactly right. And Harmeet is asking the question that really she doesn't want to know the answer to. But yeah, the actual truth is, they want non-citizens to vote. That's why they're registering them automatically and saying somebody else will fix this problem. Okay, well, once it gets to the clerks, they'll have the mechanics and the mechanisms to fix the list. They clearly do not. And so they'll be on the list, they'll get ballots, extra ballots will be sent out. As we know, the argument that, no non-citizen would vote because the penalties are severe is obviously ridiculous. 400 of them did that in New Jersey. Even in Michigan, they've got dozens of people who've done it as well, also confirmed. But when it comes time to actually check and validate the list, they're gone. They don't want anything to do with it. And they oppose the DOJ. They oppose the Save America Act. They file lawsuits to stop the executive order from the president, doing everything humanly possible to keep their elections rigged. So we'll keep our eye on this one. A lot of additional litigation against Jocelyn Benson, including the fact that she's ordering the clerks to delete election records within 7 days of the aftermath of the election. So big problems out there. We'll keep our eye on this one. And we got one final update on the day, my friends. This one is another very curious one from Homeland Security, explaining a Canadian citizen living in the United States indicted for illegally voting in our elections. And the president now striking back against the Canadians with a big name change that they're not going to be happy about. Homeland Security Investigations made this announcement saying another non-citizen voter, this time a Canadian living in Massachusetts, was arrested and charged for allegedly falsely claiming citizenship and registering to vote and unlawfully casting ballots in multiple elections, not a one-time thing, including 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024. And wait till you see what party this person is registered to. Homeland will continue working with our law enforcement partners to investigate these criminal violations that undermine the integrity of U.S. elections. And we've got the docket pulled up here. He was actually indicted. Previous to this, he was charged by complaint. So we have an affidavit here queued up that shows us his actual signatures and his political party. You're not going to be surprised. But the indictment says 2 counts. 1, fraudulent voting. Oh, no. He actually knowingly and willfully on November 5th, 2024, got a ballot and submitted it, knowing that it was materially false and that he wasn't entitled to do that. And then count 2, unlawful voting by an alien. In this matter, voting for president, voting for vice president, and members of the House of Representatives, all illegally indicted by a grand jury out there in Massachusetts. And so they now have this guy being prosecuted, but before the indictment came down, he was also charged in a criminal complaint. And this was brought by a Homeland Security agent. He says, "My name is Andrew DePato, and I've been employed as a special agent since 2024, taken a lot of training, very good at my job. And prior to becoming a special agent with Homeland, I served as an election coordinator." So this dude knows what's going on. "As the coordinator for the town, my duties included a bunch of things: processing voter registrations, absentee ballots, and I'm familiar generally with how this all works. And so now I submit this affidavit in support of a criminal complaint against this guy, Sonny Manhertz, for 2 counts: unlawful voting and fraudulent voting via illegal procurement of a ballot. Now, these come from my personal observations. There is more here, but here's what I know. Now, I'm aware that under federal law, the right to vote is reserved exclusively to U.S. citizens, and it's criminal to vote and to register to vote in our elections. And so as part of our efforts to investigate these things, we've examined voter rolls for certain Massachusetts communities to try to identify these people. One of these locations is called the town of Saugus, S-A-U-G-U-S. So according to records, as of February 12, 2026, there were approximately 22,880 actual registered voters there. We've been focusing on this one town, on people who are non-citizens. And so we're continuing to scrape through these lists. So this guy lives there in Massachusetts, Manhertz. Also a citizen of Canada, was born in Kirkland, Canada, became a lawful permanent resident in the United States in 1987. Never applied for U.S. citizenship. He knows what the rules are. But then in 2016, March 1, 2016, he couldn't help himself. He said, "Trump's on the ballot, and I have to stop him." So he then went and registered to vote, even though he's been here since 1987. So I believe that he submitted a voter registration form based on the information on the form, and it looks like he signed it. He listed his name, his address, his date of birth, his phone number, and when asked, "What was the address that you were at when you were last registered to vote?" he put an address on there. One question to him said, "Are you a citizen of the United States of America?" He said, "Yes, I am." In fact, he isn't. Toward the bottom of the form, you see right here, "Are you a citizen of the United States of America?" This Canadian jerk said, "Yes, I am." "Will you be 18 years of age or older?" "Yes, I am. And I hereby swear and affirm that I am, in fact, a citizen of the United States, and that I am not a person under guardianship. I'm not disqualified. I'm not incarcerated. I consider this residence to be my home," all signed under penalty of perjury. And there is his signature. Dun, 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 right there. From Saugus, Massachusetts. So then he finds a polling location at 39 Hurd Avenue at a Veterans Memorial Elementary School. Can you believe that? The location is about 0.6 miles from his address in Saugus. Then on June 1, he filled out a form that returned back to the city for registered voters. He says, "Yep, I'm confirming my prior address before 2024. On the form, he also checked the box, "Yes, I'm still living in this town, same address and more. So please detach before mailing." Yep, I'm still here. Signs his name with his signature, June 1, 24, once again wants to vote against Trump. So then they pull out his records, and there it is. Wow. You can see he voted in multiple federal elections, including 24, 2020, 2016, and 2012. Also voted in the presidential primary in March 24, as well as numerous state elections. And what party did you think he was a part of? Oh, I know. Shocking. The Democrat Party. Voted in the presidential primaries for Democrats. All of these votes by a non-citizen, something they say they check that never happens. State elections in 12, we've got 13s in primaries, state local elections, all listed here. Oh, that's from Everett. Oh, no, that's just the town that he's voting in. So Saugus and Everett. Presumably, each one of these is his vote. Sonny Sean Manhertz. What a thing, right? So state election 16, 18, 20, 20, 22, 24, 24. Primaries and actual state elections as a Democrat, as a Democrat, as a Democrat. So, yeah, and they kept him on there for years. So I obtained cell site records from his cell phone provider confirming that he was in fact near the polling location on November 5th. On that day, he flew into Logan Airport and was back in Saugus by 7:19 p.m. So may not even be living here, is like committing international voter fraud. Flies in, goes to the polls. After returning to Saugus, then Manhertz and his cell phone pings off the towers 0.8 and 0.9 miles away from the polling location at the school. So at the time that he voted, he knew he wasn't a U.S. citizen. In fact, on February 13, 2019, about 3 years after registering to vote, before 2020 and 24, he submitted to Homeland an I-90 form that was an application to replace his permanent resident card. Now, on the form, he provided his alien registration number under his name and address, phone number, date of birth. It's him. So in response to the new resident card, he says, oh, yeah, I wasn't mistaken. Like, oops, I thought I was a citizen. No, he knew. I am, in fact, a lawful permanent resident. My status is LPR. Also check the box saying, I can read and understand English. So he can't use that excuse, like me no speaka. So under 1A, check, yep, I can read and understand English. I have read and understand every question and instruction on here. Signed and dated. That was back in 2019. So then 2024 comes around, a little over a month, over 4 months before he voted in 24 illegally. He signed another I-90 form and updated his address, physical address and more. Now, even after the 24 election, he continued to say, I'm a legitimate registered voter. In fact, in March of 26, just months ago, he attended a political event. And while at the event, 2 political candidates collected signatures for their state primary nomination paper, and he's just now role-playing as an American. Why wouldn't he? He's like, oh, they let me vote. They're so stupid. Even Canadians can come in here and vote. Now, the nomination paperwork included instructions for signers saying, if you want your signature to count, you actually have to be a registered voter. And this was in 26. He signed it right there, 2 of them. Boom. Sure, I support that issue. The nomination paperwork also included a signer statement which said, we are qualified voters of Massachusetts. We're either enrolled in the party whose nomination the candidate seeks. We make the above nomination to be voted for on September 1, 2026, coming up soon. Now, despite the instructions that you have to be qualified, he didn't care and he voted anyways. So then on May 11, 26, law enforcement officers went and gave him the old knock, knock, knock on the door. And they were outside his residence. During the interview, Manhertz confirmed that he did, in fact, sign the voter registration form on 2016. Also further confirmed that he signed the nomination paperwork for both candidates. And when shown a list of the elections that he had previously voted in, did you vote in all these elections? He confirmed that the list was accurate. And he further added, oh, you only have 2012? What are you, nuts? I've been voting since 2008. Admits everything, and it's even worse than you thought. So he added that his current polling location is at a school. So this is the point. They don't check the lists. If they would have invalidated these people, he would have been kicked off a long time ago. But every time he voted, he dispossessed an actual American citizen. And so therefore, Special Agent Andrew DePato said, yeah, there's probable cause to believe that this guy is a non-citizen. He voted in 24 and all the way back to 2008, knowingly, willfully depriving Massachusetts a fair and impartial election and was conducting materially false fraud in violation of multiple laws, all signed by this Homeland agent and approved by the judge. And so now his case is still pending forward. He'll be back in court in October 10/1/2016 at 10:45 for a status conference. And we'll see what ultimately happens to him. But as we see, he was voting for years and all of the allegations that the left makes about, oh no, it's not happening, we check it, it would never happen. He voted in like a dozen elections, so spare us the excuses. Now, while all that happened, the president said, you know what, we're getting pretty tired of Canada and these Canadians. So today, an executive order was now signed renaming Lake Ontario into Lake America. And it's official, saying with the deepest parts of the lake's waters lying within our territory, we claim most of the volume of the water, and so therefore it's ours. And we need it for the military and other things. And so we're taking it, saying maritime commerce also mostly supports America, billions of dollars of revenue, supply chains, economic importance. And so today, in recognition of this flourishing economic resource and its critical importance to our nation's economy and its people, I am directing from the White House that the lake officially be renamed Lake America. It's real. And so within 30 days of this order, the Interior Secretary, that's Doug Burgum, shall take all appropriate action to rename this throughout the entire country, including the Geographic Names Information System, and we'll just add it to our portfolio of other bodies of water, and maybe even more will be happening soon. Here is the signing of this historic rename.
We're going to be changing the name of Lake Ontario, effective immediately, to Lake America. That's going to take place right now as I sign the order. Do you have anything to say about it, Ben?
Yes, sir. So this is a straightforward but important executive order. It directs Secretary Burgum and the Department of the Interior to update the Geographic Names Information Service to reflect that the lake once known as Lake Ontario will, from this day forward, be known as Lake America. This is a lake that has most of its volume in the United States. The deepest parts of the lake sit in the United States territory, so this will reflect that this is an American lake.
Thank you. Okay.
Beautiful signature sounds.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we filed all the necessary papers, documents, everything else. We notified all of the various people that we have to notify. So we've done everything that you have to do. And this is official, effective immediately.
So it's done. So they can cry if they want to, but maybe their tears can flow into the new Lake America and add in some additional salt up there since it's not salt water. But here is more from the president. And he said, you know, it feels very good to be enveloped by bodies of water named after America. We now have the Gulf of America down south. We've got Lake America up north. We're not forgetting the Pacific and the Atlantic. Maybe those should join the portfolio. Here's the president explaining.
As you know, we took something called the Gulf of Mexico. We changed it, and now it's very routinely the Gulf of America.
True.
So if you think about it, we have a Gulf and we have a lake. Now all we need is an ocean. So maybe we'll have to change the name of the Atlantic and or the Pacific. Maybe we'll change them both. As you know, we...
Or both. And Libs of TikTok created a map to help visualize this. And I do think it has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? So you've got Gulf of America down here, Lake America, and we could call it the West American Ocean and the East American Ocean for those pesky Europeans and the Chinese. So since everybody is being so difficult right now, we'll just, make sure that America is enveloped by America. What a beautiful scene it is. And we may just continue to expand out from here too. So as you can see, the Canadians are not only voting in our elections, but they're also losing lakes in a beautiful day of American victory, now indicted for their electoral fraud And we have one more beautiful name that we can enjoy. So we'll keep our eye on this one. We'll see what happens to this guy, but I'm sure he's not alone. There are many others. And one takeaway is that look how much work it took to actually charge him. How much time and effort. They got cell phone records. Had to go interview him and ping all of his devices and then track him down. And finally, they got him. But doing that at scale, when you can't even see the lists and identifying all of the foreign voters, is a tall order, which is why it would be nice if the individual states themselves would help us in this process. But Massachusetts wants a lot more of this to continue on. So we'll keep our eye on this one until all of the voter fraud throughout America is rooted out and exposed. Thank you for joining us and subscribing as we do. All right, friends, what a beautiful day it has been. Thank you for joining us. Quick recap, and then I think my brother Joey might want to say hello. You want to? I think he does. Joe was hanging out with us for the show. And here is the man himself, Joey G.
What's up, dudes?
What's going on, Joe?
I'm good.
What do you have to say to your fans out there?
I love you saying about Trump problem.
You love what I was saying about a Trump problem.
Yeah, he owed me some money.
Trump owes you some money.
Yeah, it's bad.
What kind of money?
Like 3,000.
Whoa.
50 $1,000.
$3,000?
No, 50 $1,000.
50,000?
Join a suitcase.
Wow, suitcases of cash from President Trump?
Yes, I do.
Well, he can afford it. Why do you deserve that money, you think?
Why? Because he owes us some money.
Because he owes us some money.
Yes.
All right, well.
Yeah.
President Trump, if you're out there, 50 G's for my brother.
And don't forget to swipe all my Schwarzenegger stuff.
You like your Schwarzenegger face swipes?
Yeah, I already have more too. I'm going to record it later.
You're going to do a podcast later? We'll record one?
Yeah, I don't want to record right now. Just a live stream.
Later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a good day today?
Yeah, I just a little tired of that.
A little tired.
I was bummed out this morning. I don't know.
Bummed out?
Yeah.
Well, your Uncle Joey, you're hanging out with the baby a lot.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Yeah. We're glad you're here, man.
And don't miss the Schwarzenegger over here.
Don't miss Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. I love it, Mom.
You love Mom. That's good.
Yeah.
Nice, man. Any other updates for your fans? Anything else you want to say?
I'm fine right now because I just you need listeners. New movies coming out this year, like all the Terminators 7, Find the War or End of the War. Yeah, that's good right there. But Genesis is a good one.
Oh, you like that one? So let me show you. John just sent in.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
A face swap.
Yeah. Try it's just as good. Don't forget Dark Fate. Terminator Dark Fate.
Dark Fate as well. Another good one.
Yeah.
So here, let me show everybody what we're looking at right here. You like this one?
Oh my God, that's a great one.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, John did that. Pretty cool, huh?
Hey John, do it T3 and T4 and T6.
Okay.
Yes.
T3, T4, and T6.
Yeah, I didn't do.
Yeah, well, you saw some of the other ones. John did a couple other ones. Let me show you.
I know it'd be different.
Well, did you see these ones? I think. What about this one? Did you see this one?
No, I think that.
Did you see what? Cool. Did you see what they did to me? Yeah. See who they made me? See what they did to me?
Oh yeah, could you be like that? Great, funny in the movie.
They turned me into a transgender. I think. That's a woman, right? In the movie?
Yeah.
They made me a woman.
Yeah, I am a Schwarzenegger.
Pretty cool. That's a good one. I think John made that one. And what about this one? You like this one? Let me show this one here.
That's a cool one.
You like that one too?
Yeah.
Pretty cool, huh?
Hey, Bobby, you swipe your face where you wait, the other guy do it.
They made me a woman in this one too.
No, this one right here. That one.
Look at this one. Look, they made me Sarah Connor, I think.
I know.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what's going on out here.
Like that.
What about this one? You like this one?
That's better, yeah.
Hey, that's both you and me, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Terminator 7?
Yeah, that's it.
Nice.
I want T3 and T4.
Yeah? Let's see what this one is. You like this one?
That's number 5. Yeah, that's better. Man.
Okay, this one's pretty awesome too.
Yeah.
Terminator Genesis.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Man, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah, I need Terminator 3 and Terminator 4. Salvation.
All right. And what's this one?
Oh my god, I like that one too.
You like this one?
Oh, that's my face?
Yeah, over here.
Oh my god, that's me. Yeah, I'm gonna swipe up my buddy's face. Timothy Gilly Mickelson, I want to be John Cena's face.
Yeah? What about this one here?
Yeah, I like that.
Hey, that kind of looks like Mom, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is Mom.
Yeah, man, that's pretty cool. And that's your boy over here. That's me. That's you. That's kind of a little older Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
It's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
These are your fans, man. They love you. They love doing this.
Do it some more on like Terminator 3
Terminator 3.
and Salvation.
All right. And Salvation.
I will pop that one up.
You like this one?
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah. Thank you. We are taking out for dinner tonight.
Are we?
Yeah, we are.
All right. Well.
Yeah, I don't listen to Mom stuff.
All right.
I love you.
You excited for dinner? All right. Say thanks to your fans, man. They're excited to see you today.
Yeah, I'll be doing my stuff. Yeah, I'm freezing.
You're freezing. Well, we turned the air conditioning on because we're doing a show.
Sorry.
All right, I'll turn it off. We're almost done. All right. Say goodbye to your fans.
I love it, dude. Don't forget, always I'll be back. I love it, Mama. Hasta vista, baby.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right, Joey G, my friends. Thank you for sending him some love. And we're going to record a podcast later for him. He does have a channel. He has a channel. I Am Joey G is the name of the channel. We haven't added anything to it. We were going to upload a video that we recorded yesterday, and then we started the recording. And as soon as I left the room, he stopped the recording. So it was not actually recorded anywhere, which is a problem. But it's okay. Not a big deal. We'll just do it again. Don't have to worry about it. No big deal. But his channel's named I Am Joey G, and it's on YouTube if you want to check it out. I'm sure we can find it somewhere. We haven't added anything to it in a while, but he'll be hopefully recording something that works. Yes, here it is. Dun, 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 dun. All right, this is his channel. I'll drop it in the chat. We're going to upload something to this as soon as we can get it officially recorded, but I Am Joey G. Boom. He's got a lot of fans out there.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love you.
He says he loves you. All right. So thanks for sending my brother some love. He loves you guys. We appreciate all that. But if you just got here, quick recap on the show. We had a good one today. We talked a lot of election stuff, some little heavy lifting here with some of these PDFs, but it was good stuff. The DOJ fired back against Indira Talwani and the leftist lawyers in League of Women Voters in the state of California. We also then talked about Indira Talwani. We saw that the red states have also responded, saying we actually want these things to be implemented. Chris Mays says, over my dead body. Then we saw new documents released courtesy of Sheriff Darleaf related to the whistleblower seemingly communicating with somebody about how everybody is just by default registered to vote. We saw that there were 709,000 signatures that were all added into this petition submission, and then they invalidated the whole thing. They said, sorry, we looked at 1,000 of them, you don't qualify, and it's game over. We also saw that their local government will be jumping in on this. Mike Lee wants the SAVE Act passed, and then we turned our attention to the illegal Canadian voter who's been indicted, and we went through the criminal complaint, and then the president came out and struck back against Canada. It is now Lake America. That's it. End of story. Google better update their maps, or else they're Canadian traitors. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. Happy Thursday. Hopefully your week has been outstanding and incredible. And you join us back tomorrow on Friday. It'll be a good one. We also had a great members only stream this morning, by the way. If you care to join us as a member, this morning, we talked about Trump. He declared a national emergency as it relates to our power grid. We think it has something to do with China. There was a big botnet that was just taken down, read through the affidavit that the FBI submitted to go seize some additional domains. So that was a big deal. We also talked about the Antifa Mastermind Network, this Autistici Inventati group based out of Italy. They are like the infrastructure backbone, like your Google suite, like your Gmail for insurrectionist Antifa goons. And now they got sanctioned. A bunch of people got added to the OFAC list, swear jar, and they're in big trouble. And then we looked at Tim Walz. Tim Walz got crushed this morning in the Texas extradition fight. And the ICE agent is now free, released from custody, not being ordered to be returned over to Minnesota, Somalia. So all good news this morning. And of course, we'll be back tomorrow with even more. Now, let's see who's here and joining us on the day and what you have to say about all of this. Couple of nice comments here. Thank you, friends. Good job, Joe.
I'm coming back.
All right, coming back. All right. We got some new members coming in. Hey, Mock Schnell. Oh my gosh, is that 50 new members? What a beautiful day it is. Lots of new members. Oh yeah, this was Zuckerberg. I think when he was trying to pretend like he likes America again. He's like, I know. Let me just go wakeboard with a flag. And then all of a sudden, all my communist traits will be forgotten about because Trumpers are so dumb or something. And he's like, oh no, I love MAGA all of a sudden. Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah. After he facilitated about $500 million over to the Chan Zuckerberg initiative in 2020 to rig the elections back then. Now he's like, no, I'm Team MAGA. I swear. I love you guys. God bless America. Whatever. So, hey, Steph D, what's going on? 30 months as a member. Thank you for doing the math, Steph D. 2.5 babies. Woohoo. Appreciate the calculation on that. But thank you for being here for 30 months. That's an amazing time. Lot of time together. And so we're grateful for you. Shout out, Steph D. Thank you. Tim Jake, hey, 2 Minnesota Freeing Our Futures fraudsters just got sentenced this morning. Ahmed Getty, 5 years, and Abdi Hakim Ahmed, wow. He got 4.5 years in prison. Each one of them has to pay over $2 million in restitution. Amazing. That's great, Tim Jake. Yeah, hopefully those continue on. And I'm noticing they're getting a lot less time than Amy Bach did. You know, the white female gets 40 years. These guys get 4.5 years. They'll be out in 2 or 3 probably. So thank you, Tim Jake, for the heads up on that. And it's good. It's good those things are happening, finally. But I don't know that they've really self-policed out there. I think a lot of these are federal charges, right? So good news. Thank you, Tim Jake. We appreciate that. And thanks for being a member as well. You rock. What's going on? The Rubos are back, man. The Rubos, we saw them in the chat this morning as well. Shout out to the Rubos. Friends, thank you for praying for Donald and Cheryl Lynn Rubo. They had a little bit of a hell scare, but they're back in action, and we're grateful for that. You can also find them at rubosaltshop.com. Why wouldn't you get the best salt in the world? It comes from the ocean of France. Forget about the French thing, but it's good salt. Rubos, good afternoon and evening, Rob, and watching the Watcher family. God bless you and keep you. From the Rubos. And I know many of you sent them prayers during their time of need, and they had heavenly guidance in their healing journey. So good stuff. Rubos, great to see you guys. Hopefully you continue to do well. Mock Schnell, what's going on? Mock Schnell, thank you for bringing in 50 members. Amazing of you to bring so many friends in. Freedom Forever, welcome. Reynard, Caesar, we got the Lonely Cacapau. What's up? Richard Fox, Aquarian. We got Big C, Godfather. We got TM, Scott Salmon, Inc. What's up, Yogi Fish? Natasha Moore, welcome. Zon Bean. We got NRAD, Baked Alaska. Esley. What's up, Karen Phillip? AJSRC. We got Fred Haddad Jr. What's up, Dr. Scott? Dark Star Man. We got Baby Loves Toys. FL Kevin, welcome. Stephen Behrens. We got Sherry Bashor. What's up, Scooby? We got Kurt Steven. Jim Naughton. Plants Are My Jam. Mama Sutra. What's up, Keith? I Am the Andrew. We got Iceman. Farmers Llamas, O Proxy, Leland Carlton, Anthony Gosson, Joseph Smith, Matt V. What's up, Defcon, Sky King Chandler, Stormy Wind. What's up, Cisco, Lady Liberty, Joshua Davis, Zion. We got Rick Grimes, Samala, Aditya. We got Mitch Hav, Carl Sanford, Trade Beardsman, Just Rhonda saying, come join us tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern time. And Freedom Forever saying thanks for the gifted subs. And so Mock Schnell, very generous of you. Thanks for bringing in 50 new members for us. We'll see everybody in the morning, and it's going to be great. Mock Schnell, you're the man. Thank you for that. We appreciate you spreading the love around. Hey, Michael Barber, welcome, Michael. And new members, grab the stream from this morning. There was some good substantive stuff there today, as we just outlined. And so hopefully we see you back tomorrow. Mock Schnell, hey, Rob, great streams today. I got to say I love President Trump. He has appointed great people, and the markets show this. Now SCOTUS needs to finish the Second Amendment. And Mock Schnell does well in the markets, which is why he brings in so many new members. So when he wins, we win. So we're grateful for that. So thank you, Mock Schnell. And SCOTUS needing to finish the Second Amendment. Yeah. What is open? Like we just saw the DOJ wasn't going to appeal the National Firearms Act, right? So that was all kind of settled. Anyways, Mock Schnell, we'll keep our eye on it. Thank you for being here. 22 months. You're amazing. One old guy, AG Chris Mays, the over my dead body is so dramatic. Must be a Lindsay Clancy fangirl. Probably. I saw that case is now off with the jury. Closing arguments yesterday and today. Any predictions out there? Yeah, we'll see, one old guy, what goes down on that one, or how long deliberation goes on. Time will tell. Off-label pod, what's up? Hey, Selective Services plans to wargame the draft. Ratcliffe went to Moscow. China hacking group dismantled. Sounds like more than sable rattling now. That's interesting. I did see that Ratcliffe went to Moscow. I think that was always, that was kind of, they said it was just standard business. I don't know if that's true or not. But yeah, hopefully we're not about to enter World War III. Hopefully they can avoid that. Hey, SM, what's up, Off-Label? Have a great stream later. Hey, SMM 5070, welcome aboard. Thank you for signing up and becoming a member. Grab the stream from this morning and we'll see you tomorrow. One old guy, communist tactics, telling U.S. citizens to go pound their crank in the dirt. They rigged the petition process too. Freaking commies out there. Yeah, they take a 1,000 vote sample and then disqualify 700,000 plus votes. Crazy times up there in Michigan. Slimmer Stubby says there's a saugus in my area of California pronounced saugus. I'd imagine the Massachusetts one could be the same. Probably right. Yeah, and thank you for the assistance in the pronunciation, which I tend to butcher. Thank you, Slimmer. William Ratcliffe. Possible mail fraud also. Yeah, good question. I don't know where he was mailing things from. It sounds like he took an airplane into Massachusetts. You're talking about the Canadian illegal voter. Flew into Massachusetts and maybe didn't use state lines. But I understand your point maybe about using the federal mail to facilitate a fraudulent vote, which is why we need this executive order to go through. But interesting question, right? Like he didn't mail across state lines. It was like internal mail. But I see your point. Like, what if he was mailing his ballot in from Canada? Oh, gosh. No See My Face. Welcome. No See My Face. Amazing. Thank you for signing up and becoming a member. Can't wait to see you tomorrow morning. Should be a good one. One old guy. Hey, Democrats, non-U.S. citizens from Canada, take off, eh? Rob and Doug McKenzie do not agree with this Canadian hosier. From one old guy. Yeah, I'm just going to vote in your elections, eh? No, don't vote in our elections. Hey, Biltong is here. What's going on, King of Biltong? You know where to go here. BiltongUSA.com. Check out the website. Use code Robert for 10% off. And when you go there, order Biltong. And now they've got coffee. Tribal coffee. Single source Papua New Guinea beans. Bold flavor. Real coffee. So you'll have meats and coffee and sauces. It's just like a heavenly brew. I was going to say an amalgamation, but that seems a little bit complicated. But King, congratulations on the new product line. Thank you for the dono and for being here. Philip Butler, what's going on? Trump better pay up. I know. What's he entitled to $50,000 for? What is he like? What does he think? Like this is USAID? All that got canceled there, Joey. No more gravy train for anybody. You know? Maybe he'll start a nonprofit or something. And then he'll get 50 G's. Philip Butler, what's going on? Hilarious. Hey, Sandy, will Talwani have to cite the law she claims this violates? I mean, she should. She should articulate it very clearly because they did that. They said that actually some of these claims actually can't even be here. You have no subject matter jurisdiction over it. So she better. He indicated that she thinks it's ultra virus. Anything else would mean she has no jurisdiction, right? What happens when a judge continues to rule after SCOTUS says no jurisdiction? Don't they lose immunity? I mean, no. I mean, first of all, who's going to prosecute him? Who's going to sue him? So like Judge Jeb Boasberg did this. Remember with the AEA stuff, the Alien Enemies Act and the deportation of the MS-13, the gangbangers and more. Trump sent him on a plane, sent him to El Salvador. He then issued orders back. Ultimately, he was slapped down by the Supreme Court, but he just said that he was going to continue on the discovery process. He got slapped down like 3 times. And then he was going to continue on the discovery process using the contempt power that was sort of inherent within his court system for violating an illegal order. So really nothing happens. I mean, that's kind of the problem here. It's like Congress doesn't impeach them. The Supreme Court doesn't do anything about it. No one's going to sue them. What's like the Postal Service going to go sue this judge and say, you've lost your immunity because you're like they're just not doing it. So nothing. But really, I think the simplest way to answer the jurisdictional claim is that like statutory objections. So if you say the Postal Service is violating a specific prohibition, or they're doing something that they clearly have no power to do that is outside of the law, both of those would be statutory objections. And so they should take the statutory objections through the PRC, the Postal Regulatory Commission. For other claims like the constitutional claims that aren't statutorily based or like APA based, I think they're going to say in response to all this that the con claims can be brought in Article 3 and those claims may survive. But as the briefing from the DOJ pointed out, they're trying to like smuggle them in. They're trying to say that something that is a statutory claim isn't, it's a constitutional claim because it's usurping elections. They're saying it's not, it's actually rules that Congress has authority over via the Constitution, and Congress then delegated the implementation back over to the executive branch and the USPS. So they're saying that that whole chain is a constitutional violation ultimately. So think of it that way. Con law stuff, I think they'll argue can still be brought in the Article 3 courts. The other stuff that should go to the PRC, she should have to flesh those things out. We'll see if, whether she does or not. But there are no repercussions for any of these judges. It's a total free-for-all. They can do whatever they want. Congress just like, well, whatever. So Sinsin, hey, much love to Joey G and baby XOXO. Be well and safe. Thank you, Sinsin. Joey, you got a fan, Sinsin, in the house.
Always.
She says, much love to Joey G. Right over here. See this one? Sinsin.
Sinsin?
Yeah, she says, much love to Joey G and baby.
Oh, that's cute.
That's nice, huh? Yeah. That's nice. All right. So, Chris, hey, great job today. Actually, always. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for being here and joining us. And for the dono and for being a member. And Amanda Taylor says, Rob, I received an email from the White House concerning my request for you to receive a federal judgeship. It read good. So you're saying there's a chance? Man, send me into the... Well, first of all, don't tell any senators about what I'm about to say during my confirmation hearings. But I am going to injunct the crap out of the left. You're never going to see anything like it. But if I get asked about that during my confirmation hearings, I'm going to say it's a joke. So, just take it for what it's worth. It's a joke. I'm only kidding. Hey, Eileen Wilfor. What's up, Eileen? Thank you for sending in a trophy cake. And Martin Miller says Trump should know Kim Jong-un won't denuclearize even when Trump tries to make it happen because the nukes are Kim's only leverage on the world stage. Yeah. No, once you get nukes, you're not giving those up. Are you kidding? Why would you ever do that? You never would. That's like the golden ticket. That's like the grand prize. You get nukes, you're pretty good. You're pretty safe. Nobody wants to mess because you'll nuke them. So yeah, I haven't seen much on that story about whether Trump wants him to denuclearize, but I can't imagine that would ever happen. So thank you, Martin, for the heads up. But I think that's right. He's not going to do that. Why would you? It's like giving up your best leverage that you could possibly get. It's top level of international military strategy. Sandy, election interference is a crime in critical infrastructure, also under color of law crimes like 18 U.S. Code 241. Talwani should be prosecuted if she uses the bench without jurisdiction to interfere with an election. Sandy, I'm with you. 100%. Yeah, I think a lot of these judges, though, they have a colorable claim that they're actually following law. Okay, that's the problem with the law. Like the law, you can write it any way you want. The answer, your first response in law school, what is the answer to any legal question? It depends. And so they do that. They just find a mechanism to say, well, my interpretation is that it fits in this exception, within an exception, within an exception. I mean, they prosecuted Trump with 34 felonies using the same strategy. Well, this we can tuck in here and turn a misdemeanor into a felony and then extend it on out and so on. And no one will prosecute them. Okay, we have no big fannies. We have no Jack Smiths. We have no Alvin Braggs on our side. They, in a federal case, would need to be prosecuted by the DOJ. They're not going to do that, clearly. And if they were prosecuted, I mean, they have prosecuted judges, like they prosecuted Backdoor Dugan. So it's not without precedent. Maybe I shouldn't oversell it. But that was like, escaping an illegal alien out her back door. She had no arguable basis for it. She still claimed judicial immunity for an open, flagrant crime of escaping a prisoner. And she's appealing it, so she's still appealing that. And she got probation and like a small sentence. So what can you do? And that's my point. Maybe that's why I should go to the DOJ instead of the judiciary. Then I can just prosecute everybody. Who sent that letter? If they're not interested in the judgeship, can I be deputy AG? That's another idea. So if federal judgeship is denied, then deputy AG would be good. Throw me over there. And then I'll just have to fall on the sword for America. Be historic. Indict everybody. You know what I mean? But I still have to get through the Senate confirmation hearing. So senators, if you're listening, I will be fair and neutral and nonpartisan, and I will follow the law, just like the Democrats do. That's what I can say. I'll act just like Lisa Monaco did. Yeah, you guys confirmed her, so I'll do the same thing. They won't even know what I'm meaning in my subtext. But Sandy, thank you for the heads up. I mean, this is the point, is that they're in positions of power where they're insurrecting under the color of law. And so they have an argument that it's not actually a crime. They know what they're doing. This is the problem with lawfare. It's pseudo legal. When they sue and they extend the statute of limitations in New York so that they can hit Trump with an E.G. Carroll claim, it's all kind of legal in a way, even though in substance, it's not. It's lawfare. It's the problem. So, hey, Michelle Bashore, is Joey married? Is the question? No, he's not married.
I was.
But you have a girlfriend.
Cameron's my girlfriend now.
Cameron?
Cameron.
Her name's Cameron?
Yeah.
Is that new?
Yeah, I'm coming over there. I just show him.
Well, don't show the picture, but when did you guys start dating? Is this new?
It's kind of new, yeah.
How new?
Well, just a couple of years.
A couple of years? No.
That's true.
No, like a couple days or a couple weeks?
Yeah, a couple of days.
A couple days. Okay, so new girlfriend in a couple days. I was gonna say I had not heard that name before. So
yeah, that's true.
Things are dynamic in their relationships. So
wait.
Cameron.
No, last name.
No, I know. I don't want to say her last name.
It's fine. Go ahead.
No, I won't say her last name.
Trust me.
No, it's okay. Everyone knows her name is Cameron.
Thank you.
So girlfriend,
yeah.
New one. You think she's the one?
She's the one.
Wow. Wow. All right. Sounds like there's love in the air, my friends. That's good news.
Yeah, she's my kid.
Yeah. But it is very dynamic. So tomorrow we may have, hopefully not, but it could change. Fingers crossed. Hey, James Bacon. Hey, get the Save America Act done, Thune. Hey, love your pod. Fantastic. Thank you, James. Very nice to have you here. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I agree. John Thune, it would be very nice if he did really anything. That would be a big win, but really anything. Like if they could codify some immigration stuff, great. If they could codify some Doge things, that'd be great. election stuff would be a home run, but they're not that interested in any of that. I think they're just biding their time. But what's going on? Thank you for that, James. Friends, thank you for sending in all of those donations. Thank you for sharing some love with my bro. And we had a couple of other comments. Rick D. First Circuit has overturned a lower court ruling saying that the school cannot ban parents and grandparents from school sporting events from wearing pink wristbands supporting no males in women's sports. Well, that's pretty interesting. So like a free speech case, huh? Out of the First Circuit. So actually it goes against the parents. So lower court, we'll have to look at that one, but lower court said you can't ban them, and the First Circuit said you can. Wild times out there. So thank you, Rick D, for the heads up there. What's going on, Dan? I'm sick of hearing the word undocumented. The word is illegal. Let's all say it together, illegal. Yeah, it's in federal law. It says illegal alien in federal law. I said that one time to a very woke high school lady who was my teacher or whatever. She hit the ceiling. So, well, there's a lot of illegal aliens out there. She said, yeah, what? I was like a sophomore. I was like, what the hell? I thought it was like the word for him. First time I got slapped down by a teacher. I was like, wow, this class is terrible. And I'm now going to become a hardcore conservative. So now, thank you for that, professor. Look where we're at now. Hey, Dan, capitalists are obsessed with making money, says the socialist whose entire vision of life is built around seizing and redistributing the money made by others. Capitalists are obsessed with money, so we have to tax it and take it from them and give it to us. Couple of other good ones from Dan. Thank you, Dan. Rick D said there was a memo from Senior Director of Journalistic Standards saying, oh, I think I saw this. Yeah, Canada is not going to refer to 9/11 as a terrorist attack. And what are they going to call it? Like a plane crash or something? Okay, that's just dumb. They if they really wanted to strike back, they would just name another lake like Trudeau. Oh yeah, we're going to call this Lake Trudeau then. But they're not. They're going to call 9/11 a clear attack, not an attack. Wild. Rub some dirt on it, sharing the link to track the lunar eclipse tonight. Okay, so shout out to our astrophotographers and our Whirlpool Galaxy friends. We got a lunar eclipse tonight. I think that's going to be around, what'd you say, 10:30 Eastern time? Let me just pull this baby up here. Midnight, looking like 12 a.m. midnight-ish. Thank you, Galaxy Whirlpool, for sharing that one. Hey, Tori is home. What is the importance of a lake being renamed? Well, the biggest reason is because it irritates the Canadians. That's really, I think, the big effect of it. Also, national pride and these other things. But personally, I think it's just a little trolling going on. So outside of that, I don't really know. But it's called We Do a Little Trolling. So I think that's about it. And Canadians can just read it and weep. Hey, Barry, looking good, Uncle Joey. He is looking good. Handsome man, isn't he? So, all right, friends, it's been a beautiful stream. Thank you so much for joining us on the day. Appreciate you being here. And we'll check X, and then we'll call it an evening. And then, of course, we'll be back tomorrow to get into even more, to close out the week strong. It will be a good one. What's going on? Yeah, hey, No Rose Glasses says, Shapiro and Dems are running an election op with Lancaster measles. I saw that. Yeah, so we've been talking a little bit about that in the mornings. We saw that RFK Jr. and Shapiro were duking it out. And it's about measles. And they don't ever want to answer the question, where did the measles come from? Where did it just pop up from? Perhaps it came from 20 million illegal aliens coming into the country. Be torn. Watchdog files a bar complaint against Janine Pirro. Yeah, they also filed one against James Percival. Yeah, they did that, didn't they? Thank you, B. Torn. OTR Smokehouse. I have to say, Rob, we need a family picture of G. Curl. G. Curl. Was that my Brandon Gill curl? Family picture of G. Curl. I'm not even sure what that is, OTR Smokehouse. But sounds awesome. Thank you for that. And B. Torn, Trump didn't think renaming Lake Ontario through. Instead of the lakes going by the acronym HOMES, they can, and if damn you to see this, now go by the acronym SHAME. So like all the Great Lakes. Oh, I see. So like Superior, Huron, America, Michigan, and Erie. I got it. So the acronym. Well, can it be something else? What about like MASH or Maze, Mahis, Mahis or something. All right. So anyways, thank you, B Torn and Neuro D also sharing this one. We got join the Watching the Watchers Locals community at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you want to come over and join us, we'll be there tomorrow morning. We'll also be on YouTube to have a nice, loving Friday morning celebration with our member friends. We'll get into some new good things. And then, of course, we'll be back tomorrow evening to do it all again and close out the week strong. Hey, thank you, Glenn. Yeah, so let me drop Joey's channel link here. Boom, right there in the YouTube chat. Right there. In fact, I'll pin it. And we're going to try to get a podcast done because he's got a lot of updates to share. Well, so it should be good.
Tomorrow is better.
We'll do one tomorrow?
That's better. You're hungry.
Oh, it's dinner time right now. So too hungry to record. I can understand that. So, hey, thank you, James. What's up, Sin? I despise Thune. Can't wait till he's out of here. He's backstabbing America. And his millions can't save him. His hometown hates him. We all really despise the guy from Sin. Thank you, Sin. Yeah, it's very disappointing when you'll have a person who's there to like deliver a victory and just can't get it done for whatever reason. And then when you ask him about it, it's all just like platitudes. Like, well, we don't have the votes. Did you try? No. Is there another alternative option? No. Yes, there is. Base Mike Lee says there is. You could try it. Did you even try? No. He's like Eeyore. Can't do it. No, pass the SAVE Act. I'm John Thune. Don't have the votes. Thank you, John. We got it. Can you try? If you can't do it, if you can't have the stomach to do it, then get out. Thank you, Sin. Glenn Croy, Rob dropped the link for the channel. Boom, dropped it. Thank you for checking it out. What's up, one old guy? Flying well is lame, my FYI. Take off. Hoosier? It is flying well Islami FWI from one old guy. Man, that sounds like a riddle. I'm gonna have to think about that one for a while, one old guy. Thank you for the heads up. Good stuff. Good stuff on that, one old guy. All right, and Michelle. Hey, prayers up for Gina Hansen having surgery in the morning. Gina, may our Heavenly Father watch over you, help those doctors and the nurses and every single person in that hospital. Exercise the health care and treatment that you need with the guiding hand of our Holy Father. Sending energy into that room so that you emerge healthier and happier than ever before. And you return back here feeling good with all of your ailments solved. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So Gina, thank you for that. And friends, we'll pause here on the evening. It's been a beautiful stream. Thank you for sending in the amazing donations. Thank you for supporting my brother Joey.
Yep.
For checking out his channel. And for making those face swaps that he loves so much.
Oh.
He loves them. He's saying heck yeah over there. So we'll pause here on the evening. We'll be back tomorrow to get into it again. It's been a beautiful stream. Thank you to our amazing mods and meme smiths before we close it out. What's up to Muffin Rando? We got K Bean clipping for us. We got John in the house. We got Donut Mind Me. We got Neuro D. We got Janik. We got Dog Digger, Geegum Geegum, Elliot, Just Rhonda, all keeping things nice and orderly around here. And thank you, my friends, for liking the video on the way out. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for returning back here tomorrow to join us because we're going to get into it again. And in order to do it all appropriately, we need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night. Sleep very, very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. marching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chatting line. Together we exposed corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers, truth on our side. Watching the watchers, we won't be denied. Watching the watchers, eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through